Welcome back to Andertons TV, ladies and gentlemen. I'm with Jamie from Earthquaker Devices. He is on his, I wouldn't say annual pilgrimage to Europe, but you've...
close to it.
It's close to it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he has very kindly agreed to spend some time with Andertons to talk about, well, anything really. We have talked about a lot of things.
We have,
you know, there's a lot to talk about if you're from America at the moment, but we're not going there. Let's talk about 4 pedals.
Yes.
That are relatively new in the Earthquaker range. Certainly, we haven't done any video on these yet, so this is very opportune that you're here. But anyway, it's lovely to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
What were you? Were you in Budapest or?
Yeah, we were in Budapest. We did an event there with Pete.
I saw the pictures of the. It looks like a beautiful city.
It is. It's awesome. This is the first time that we were there. It was actually Julie, my wife, that I run Earthquaker with. It was our birthday, so we were like, we got
happy
invited.
joint birthday.
Yeah, we were. We have the same birthday, which is really, I guess, kind of weird.
At all. No.
Yeah, exact same day, and we got invited to do this event. We were like, sure, we'll go to Budapest on our birthday, and it was awesome. It was.
I have to say, for anyone that's, I feel terrible really. It's so easy if you live in Europe to jump on one of these like red-eye flights out of Gatwick at 6 a.m. in the morning and be in Vienna or Barcelona or, you know, name any
amazing
and
old
any city, like even ones where you're, you know, I grew up and still at a time when I think if you lived in Western Europe, you were kind of told, you know, Eastern Europe would be a horrible place to live, you know. So but you go and see what, you know, Krakow or Budapest or all these kind of beautiful, and any city that's got like, you know, 1,000 years of history or whatever is just fabulous place to go. So I've done my bit for the European Tourist Board. Let's talk about pedals. That's just a genius name for a pedal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it statistically? Isn't Gary one of those names that is now nobody is called anymore?
I
They're
don't
done
believe...
like birth census things now, where it's just
like Gary's off the table.
Gary, Nigel. There's probably 3 or 4 names where it's just like when I was at school, like, you know,
if you're
half the kids were called Gary.
and named Gary, you're probably born with like a mustache and
a mullet.
You're just a mullet, but you're balding for life. Like that's just how it's gonna work.
So tell me about the Gary then.
Gary is a pedal that I worked on for Lee from the band Idols.
Right.
Who I love Idols so much.
Great band.
Yeah, and the name actually comes from, he used our gray channel pedal, which was discontinued. But every time he would type it out, it would change to Gary. So he was like, when he pitched it to me too, he was like, I got a perfect name for it. And he just had the right comedic timing for it. He's like, Gary. I was like,
superb.
Done, sold.
That's superb. So basically a misspelt grey is Gary. Fine. Perfect. So yes, just to clear up, it's nothing to do with any famous, like Gary Moore, Gary Newman, Gary Kemp. Come on, think of another famous Gary in music.
Oh, Gary Busey.
Gary Busey.
Gary Busey.
Yeah.
Let's talk about butter sausage.
Gary Gnu. Nobody ever brings up Gary Gnu, but I'm not sure how many people actually know about Gary Gnu.
I don't know him.
Like, great Space Coaster.
So Idols, great band.
Incredible. I think doing a lot for the state of guitar-based rock music.
Yeah, they're one of the few proper guitar rock bands that the mainstream radio over here will still play.
That's amazing. You don't really hear it too much on the radio in the US,
right?
But like you go to their shows, and I mean that's one of the best live shows. Going.
So I mean, I heard a little. We asked Jamie to give us your loudest tone pre-sound check, and it was like boom. And so I've heard this for about 5 seconds, and it's wicked. But tell it. So give us a bit of a play on this.
The left side is a piece of the gray channel. So he used the green side of the gray channel, and that's what this is, minus the diode selection switch. So it's just like pure op-amp distortion.
Right.
Really, it works as a great boost if you like want to drive the front end of an amp, but he kind of uses it, I think, as like a distortion. And then his request for the right side was make me a fuzz that sounds broken. Right. And he kind of gave me a couple like pedals that he liked, and I was like, I make things that sound weird and maybe sometimes atonal, but I don't usually go for the it's broken and unpredictable kind of thing. So it was a little bit of a chore. The first thing I sent him kind of did it, but it wasn't that interesting, which I'm really happy. He was like, can you try again?
It's the broken fuzzes by their very nature, like particularly the vintage fuzzes.
Yeah.
Broken is probably what most people that don't know what's going on in there electronically would refer to, because as soon as it feels like the components aren't getting the voltage to actually make them do what they are intended to do, it does sound broken.
Right.
But in such a, if you love that kind of guitar tone and you're looking to, perhaps for just sort of more chaos. I love the word. I like more chaos than broken. Unpredictable.
Yes.
It's like what's it going to do? I don't know. We better hear it. Come on. Let's. So this is the broken fuzz side.
I'll play it how it's set right now, but then I'll show you why it sounds broken.
Yeah. Where's that portamento kind of? There's like a note in there that's going. Whoom,
yeah. So
whoom.
what it is a square wave fuzz that you can vary the pulse with.
Right.
So like the more narrow it gets, the more high pitched the signal is, and what is just dynamically doing it with an envelope. So like how hard you.
Right.
I mean,
that's a sci-fi movie soundtrack, isn't it? Like Darth Vader's just walked in or something like that, and it's got all that. That's great.
The audible effect kind of sounds like a little bit like pitch shifting, but you can do some really cool stuff with it, especially if you put it under control of an expression pedal.
Which control is being controlled by expression?
This.
Right.
I always have to look at it. It's called Yes. Lee came up with all the names.
That's it, and go.
Yeah. So Yes is like the sensitivity control for the internal envelope, but when you plug an expression pedal in, it sort of defeats that. And then this kind of sets the peak for how much the expression will sweep it, and it works super cool, like with things like Old Blood Noise makes that expression ramp, or like any kind of automation control. You can get some really cool synthy kind of sounds out of it. But the reason why, so like his request was, I want something like you hit the strings really hard and the sound just goes away, and then it will come back in and surprise you. And it was like, how will I do this thing? So this is what I kind of came up with for it, and this is what like our customer service guy gets emails about all the time, where people are like, I bought the pedal but it doesn't work.
Right.
Is you hit it, you can set it so it's high enough that like
So that's like a reverse. So the harder you hit it, the more it's gated, and then as it reduces down,
it gets so narrow that it just disappears. Like it's like not audible. But like the additionally, I mean, you can just remove that altogether, and it's a really nice sounding kind of square wave.
That's all your Ian Thornley chords and those big kind of fat guitar sounds that he. So essentially, if we sort of go, Oosh is
level,
gain level, whatever, and then the Yes is that strange
like the
sensitivity thing. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I like it. And then on the other side.
On the other side is pretty much just like straight up kind of clean boost.
Right.
That's it.
So that gain we're hearing now is because the amps. Wicked. And the two together, what's the, is there a sense that they're designed to work together, or is it too quite discrete?
Really, I kind of looked at them like the whole developing them like these are two separate pedals, just like in one. But one thing I kind of noticed is like where this is just like real heavy, like thick. When you run it into this, it kind of like brings out the mid range a little bit more. Like
That's great. I kind of feel there was a pedal I think Tay wanted me to sort of explore recently, and I didn't really. It was someone had bought a switching device out that let you run two pedals in parallel, and I was a bit like, I don't know if that's a bit too weird for me or whatever like that. But sometimes I think that effect that you've got on the which side? What is this side called?
Well, it's like the fuzz side. We just call it the fuzz side.
On the fuzz side, I imagine that in parallel with something that maybe did keep more of a consistent.
Yeah.
So that you could have that big envelope filtered effect, but without necessarily feeling like you were losing fatness of the signal and layering it up like that. We might revisit that, Mr. Tay, with that pedal, because I just think that's I think again, if you're a guitar player, like the sort of Idols vibe is, where it's just like, okay, we just want something that's a bit different to your average mainstream
and
rock
they're like they're very good at like creating songs out of these like little noises and little tiny riffs and stuff, and like using just the oddities of certain effects to their advantage, where it's like it comes out as rock music, but like if you broke anything down individually, it's like, what is happening with that?
That's very cool. All right, so that's the Gary. Let's move on.
We'll move on to Chelsea. I'm going to clean that dust off. This just came out.
So come on, if you're what is Chelsea if you're American?
Well,
I'm just, because I know what Chelsea is if you're British. It's a football team that is vastly overfunded. Used to be owned by a Russian oligarch who bought their success, and everyone else hates. But
we're really into that football team, so we made a pedal for them.
You've even got the colour, blue and white. I mean, it's like it could well be.
Is that what it?
That's their strip. Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody made a comment on our you see that on Instagram or YouTube, like, I'm not putting anything that's blue and white named Chelsea on my pedal board. So I Googled yesterday while we were on the train, like, what is Chelsea in blue and white?
Yeah.
And like, I did not come across that for some reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
okay. I mean, it's blue predominantly, isn't it?
Yeah.
So,
I was like, why are they so angry about this?
No, it's I don't know. It's our national sport, and there's stacks and stacks of rivalry, and hopefully most of it's good-humoured banter. Occasionally not.
Well, backstory on Chelsea, it's another artist pedal.
Okay.
And we made it for LCD Sound System.
Okay.
Which coincidentally, LCD Sound System and Idols went on tour together last year and then did a song together.
Oh, wow.
And I had been working on each of these pedals individually without really telling either band about doing it. And then when they like did that tour, I was like, there's something about this that I feel like it's just kind of meant to be. But through one of our videographers, Vice, is good friends with LCD's like lead tech, and they were looking for someone to recreate this big muff that they had been using for the whole time they've been a band. Is this late 70s version 6 transistor big muff with the tone bypass, but they just had one. He bought it at Chelsea Guitars. Right, and that is why.
And that's an American guitar store
in New York. Yeah.
Right, okay.
Kind of a pretty well-known store there. So he bought it there, and that's where the name Chelsea comes from. And it's just like it was designed with bass in mind, because that's how they use it on a bass. But obviously, it works really well with the guitar. And what had kind of happened to it over the years is like it had drifted, so it wasn't as like gainy and like full as a big muff, and it has a really different character on a guitar than it does on a bass, I think.
Is that, again, I've never professed to be any sort of engineer, but is that possible if you've got some sort of germanium transistor in there? Can that just over time lose its gaininess, or how does a component they just, like, drift in terms of
fall apart due to just age, being environmentally? I mean, the parts die, like caps become leaky, things like that. Resistors will change the value. So in this case, they were silicon transistors. I didn't really take theirs apart to measure it, but I bought a second one on Reverb just to be like, okay, if I have his and I bought this other one, how different do they sound from each other? And they sounded drastically different. I built one on the breadboard, and it kind of sat somewhere between mine and his. And then it was just like, well, what do I need to do to get from here to here with this circuit that I had built on the breadboard? And that's kind of how I went about it without like pulling it apart to measure everything. I measured some of my parts, and I've already gone down this path before. This is the second artist Big Muff that I've done. And while I collect pedals and I'm really into them, like the Big Muff is just not an area that I really explore and like consider myself like knowledgeable on, despite us having now 3 variants of this in the line. So it was like, at first when I got it, I was like, oh, this is an op amp Big Muff, which, like, you know, doing my brief scanning of YouTube comments, which I allow myself one day to do after a pedal gets released, everyone's like, oh, it's an op amp Big Muff. And it's like, haha, you're wrong. That's what I thought too. Transistor version, apparently they just made it for a little while with the tone bypass. And to me, I really like the sound of this circuit with the tone bypassed.
Let's give it something.
Yeah. So the tone is.
I am quite a fan of the. I feel like Big Muffs are. They're fuzz for people that don't want the unpredictable. You know, it's like I think it's a gateway product from fuzz into a more conventional sort of distortion overdrive.
I think so too. It's also like a really good way, like if you are just starting out on guitar and like you buy a Telecaster and like a cheap amp, it's like you could buy a Big Muff and you're like, it sounds huge. Yes. It's like a fixer for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like. Those are terrible notes that I'm just going to play right there. That's what I was trying to play.
I must admit, I love that you're playing. I think I've seen you play guitar a lot. I think you're a very, very good guitar player.
Thank you so much. It's maybe too early in the morning.
No, it's good. It's really good.
Play the guitar. But anyway, that's, you know, like you don't really get sounds like that out of a Big Muff, and then it. It cleans up.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you dig in, it's going a bit more Big Muffy, but it's quite nice that it's backing off and cleaning up a little bit more.
And like this is like a setting that when I got it, it had the settings that they use taped. And you know, pretty much. And again, it's on bass. Like this is like a really. It doesn't react the same way with. It just has a thing with the bass. It sounds. It's like that really kind of nice, like kind of Motown, like plugged directly in.
Yeah,
like,
I don't think I've ever seen a Big Muff with an on-off switch for the tone. So is that because just there's no, even with the tone at sort of center point, it's doing something?
Yeah, it cuts mids no matter how you put it.
Right. Okay. So so you've got this on the off position, so you're expecting a bit more mid-range.
Yeah, and it's you know, if you turn it back on.
There isn't really a setting that you can find on the tone control that replicates it being switched off.
It just kind of just brings all of that back in, and like sometimes I do feel like it's like jarring. Like if there's something always nice, like the Fender amp sound with the mids, and then you turn it off, and it's like. It can sound like the amp is suddenly darker, but the more you play with that, the more you find that like the guitar actually sits kind of in the right place in the mix. And then with the gain,
I was going to say, like this is.
It still like has like a really there's like some clarity to it that I feel like you don't typically get out of a big muff circuit,
Yeah.
and I think that it just, due to how theirs aged, it also like really reacts totally different through amplifiers.
Yeah.
Like I'm always shocked to hear it through whatever I'm playing.
Well,
playing it through.
it's actually a shame because as a diehard West Ham fan, I just can't buy it. So unfortunately, we have to move on to the Time Shadows now. No, there you go. Fair play. Good pedal, and all is forgiven, Frank Lampard. Mean absolutely nothing. Okay, Time Shadows. This is a collaborative pedal by the looks of things.
Yeah, it's a pedal we did with Death by Audio, who I love. I think I have fanboyed enough about them on the internet, but favorite modern pedal company.
Don't think we do much with Death by, but although Oz, our resident sort of young, fashionable guitar player that we have here, is I'm sure he's a big fan of. He always on at me.
Yeah, they're just like, there's something about, aesthetically speaking, like I think they've pretty much nailed it. Like if, you know, this is our aesthetic, but like in a perfect world, I would have thought of Death by Audios first. They always use the best knobs, and like they got really, like it seems like so insane, like when you look at it, but it makes perfect sense, like how to lay it out. And like they take a lot of chances, I think, with stuff, and they're just like, this is what it is. I'm just a big fan. So
yeah, what is going on here?
I jumped at the chance to work with them on it. So this pedal, we actually did a limited run of these, 1,000 of them for that pedal movie that Reverb did. And initially there was only 2 settings, an Earthquaker side and a Death by Audio side. Now there's 3. This middle position was actually accidentally in the first version that we did. There was like a program that I was working on that kind of got left on the master EEPROM that we copied for them, and someone figured out like if you kind of force the switch into the middle, you would get this crazy pitch shifting delay.
That noise in the background, by the way, is not the pedal. They're digging up the road at the back of the studio to replace a faulty gas pipe or something like that. So apologies about the noise.
It's just being nice. It's actually the middle setting of the pedal.
Yeah, and if the whole building explodes halfway through this video, it was nice knowing you all.
It might be fun.
Will be a big video, won't it?
I think at the heart of this thing, it's like a synthesizer delay. Like that's what this is. Like
cool.
Time is delay, time span is repeats, and filter kind of does something different in all 3 of the modes. So the original like Earthquaker mode, it's kind of hard for me to explain this, but it's like a synthy square wave sub-octave fuzz running into an envelope filter and a delay with a VCA that kind of closes at a different rate than the filter does. Again, it's reactive to like picking dynamics, and the filter controls that. I'll start it here with the time and the span all the way down.
Okay.
To me, this is like one of my favorite settings in this mode. It's just like a bowed guitar kind of a sound.
Very cool.
But then when you turn this up, I think it has this really like atmospheric, like symphonic sound to it. Like
That's super cool. It makes me feel like there's something over here that worked with that as well, would just...
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, the similar kind of just square wave distortion.
So the time itself, is that the only control on here that's really doing the delay element to it?
And then the span are repeats.
Okay, Spanish. So what was it that made... Because with all that switched off, it was a very dark sounding guitar sound. Then when you put the time and the span in, it sort of added some high frequency, or was that just you?
It's just me changing where I was
right,
playing.
Okay,
really.
fine.
But yeah, it's not really doing much more. I mean, it's probably opening the filter up higher because it's really. When you back all that off, like.
No, that it was just you were playing different stuff. But no, that's very cool. So if you back the filter down, how does that work?
So in our mode, like this is really like what controls the output volume and the input at the same time. So it's so it just gets quieter, pretty much. So it has a pretty wide range, I think. It also will change like the attack time. Also, I'm a big fan of this sound. Kind of metallic, clingy tone to it.
Great tone.
Yeah.
Obviously, the preset thing is just up to 6 presets stored in here.
Yeah. So
is it just the middle switch that's sort of doing different? Circuits as such.
Yeah, this will do the different sound. So then the other original sound is the Death by Audio, which is like crazy filter flange delay that I've never been good at describing exactly what's happening, but and that's where the fun of this pedal is, I think, in this setting, is just manipulating the filter control while you're playing it.
Right. I was going to say, is that what the control on the side does?
The expression control can be mapped to any of these 3 main controls. So you would just plug an expression pedal in and put it in toe down, and then just turn whatever control you want to be mapped to it. And then, you can set these however you want, assign the expression pedal whatever you want, and then you just hold that down for 2 seconds until it flashes, and it'll save that preset wherever you have this.
Yeah.
We did this whole series of pedals over the last 2 years, like this preset series that all have like that same kind of functionality. My thinking in that is like, I'm like a big fan. I might be like a purist or getting to the old man stage, but it's like, I really like things that are simple, easy to understand, easy to use, but I also kind of do embrace this, like if there's a lot of sounds to be had in a pedal, it's kind of nice to be able to save the ones that you like. But I'm not like a menu divey kind of person, so like this was my thought on like, how do I make something that embraces like modern technology with presets and stuff?
Does the preset remember the switch position?
Yeah,
it does.
So it'll remember the position of like these main controls and where that's assigned to.
Oh, cool.
And then you just get 6 slots. It's on like an analog switch, so you can kind of feel where it's at, and you don't have to worry about remembering. It's just my easy answer to like presets, but it still feels like very like old.
So go on, tell us this final sort of hidden
final middle one is like, I think like people who aren't that familiar with Earthquaker but know who we are, like this is right up the alley of people's perception of what we do.
Is it this control that's now affecting the pitch of the
No, this is actually now just the mix. And then the time and repeats, so it's like... So that's what that does.
How many other instruments, typically speaking, do you think, or instrumentalists are using pedals like this? I mean, does it still feel like it's like 99% guitar players, or have you got keyboard players or other?
I think like for us, like I think a good amount of our customers are doing like sound design and using them in the studio and like
just running anything.
Yeah, kind of running anything. And this particular setting, like I try to do it when I show people this with guitar, like playing like a little bit more staccato rhythmically. But if you run a drum machine through this, like this setting is actually awesome. Like it'll do different stuff to the hi-hat than it does to the kick drum, things like that. But it's just 2 pitch shifters running in parallel, like 2 pitch shifted delays running in parallel.
Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Okay, so finally, I mean, you can see obviously this is the same enclosure, isn't it? So using that same preset concept and the three switch.
Same preset rules apply. But it's just a simple delay, like 1 second long delays. There's digital, analog, and tape.
Okay, cool.
This is actually the first thing I designed like when we went into lockdown in the pandemic. And I was like, came up with this concept first and then was like, well, I better start going through all my old pedals that have been collecting dust on the shelf and see if there's anything interesting. So I kind of picked elements of all these pedals that I really like a lot and try to make a delay out of them. So like the inspiration for the digital is kind of like something like a Boss DD6 or any of these like 80s rack delays that are like really bright and clean. So like the repeats are very strong.
Yeah.
But the thing that I kind of didn't like so much about them is like the repeats are just always there. They're like really strong. They get in the way. This will have like your initial attack and like first few repeats will still remain like strong and have all the clarity to it. But it starts to roll off the high end as they decay like a typical like analog delay would. So it starts to sit in the background a little bit more.
Cool.
And then I could, yeah.
I know what you mean about the. It's. I think there's no, better or worse between digital, analog, and tape. It's just they have their different uses, and I think as you go through genres of music, or maybe not even genres, but decades of music, you'll find that certain decades would have embraced a digital delay, and therefore it becomes synonymous with that sound.
Right. Yeah. It's just like there's certain eras where they're made. But.
I noticed there's no control on here to specifically add any kind of modulation. But does that sort of naturally happen on the tape or the analog, or are you avoiding that?
I kind of avoid it a little bit. There is actually a little bit built into the tape setting. I have to admit that the very first version I did of the tape mode was really. It's a very nice representation of like my echoplex, and I had this like wow and flutter that the harder you hit the strings, the more apparent it would be, but it wasn't like too much of like a rubber band kind of effect. But at the last minute, it was like, I'd really like to add tap tempo to this, and the processing power wasn't quite enough to have both. So I chose tap tempo over like a more perfectionist.
Let's have a little listen to the analog. So typically here we should be. This is all about the tone of the repeat rather than the tone of the guitar, of the initial note, right?
Yeah, and then my inspiration for this was my KMD analog delay.
Okay.
It has a tone control on it, so you can kind of change the response a little bit, but it just has a really nice sound to me. Like.
I think I'm still hearing modulation there, but am I actually hearing modulation occurring not within the pedal, but it's where the echo is happening, but you're playing another note over the top of it, and there's modulation happening
and
there.
Like harmonizing and then just kind of like phasing off of each other.
I've always preferred that. I like analog and tape pedals because they just have that slightly softer, warmer repeat than a digital delay.
Yeah, and that's and this like. One of the things I use this KMD analog. It was the first pedal I ever bought with like my own money, and it was like it stayed on my pedal board for like 10 years, and I would always use it in kind of a shorter setting.
Well, that of course, if you had an original analog delay, was the big problem, wasn't it? You'd only get sort of 200 or 300 milliseconds.
Yeah, it was like 300 milliseconds, but it had like a really nice like. it almost sounds like reverb.
Yeah.
Like especially like if I back that down, like
Yeah.
I would use it as this. I mean, it is an atmospheric effect, but I would use it how people would use reverb all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of sits right behind the guitar in like such a pleasant way, especially with distortion.
I think as well. I haven't really done a lot of this myself yet, but I'm enjoying just those super short, almost double-tracked kind of things, just to play it, just to make your guitar sound a bit fatter as well, you know. And I think again, a good analog delay is good with that because it just adds. It's just a nice warm fatness to the sound. So by the time we're into tape, then this is so you've got the same 1 second potential delay time regardless of which of the modes.
No matter what it is.
Okay.
And the tape is like it's kind of. I took things that I like from like my. 2 echo plexes, Roland Space Echo, and then I have these 2 Telrays, an add an echo and an organ tone, and they're really like, I guess they're oil can delays, but one's broken, and I don't even know, I can't even pinpoint what the effect is. It's like cool but horrible at the same time. It's like really dark, distorted, murky tone, and the other one is just like, I don't know, it's got some character to it, but it's like a dark, like short reverb kind of tone. And then
So you've steered clear of any sense that you're trying to emulate, you know, sort of a mechanical fault or anything. It's just the tonality of the repeat.
Whatever. There's like a certain nature that all of these things had. Like they get like simultaneously thinner and darker as it decays, and there's a little bit of like, especially if you're playing with a hotter guitar, like a little bit of distortion in the repeats, like.
I think, again, these kind of pedals, you're absolutely right. You nail that middle ground between simplicity and tonality. Yeah. So yeah, okay, it hasn't got 6 knobs on it and all the different stuff that you might get on some of the more sophisticated tape delay pedals, but it's super simple to use, and it does do the basic essence of a nice sounding tape delay.
And that's like kind of the goal of like this whole series was like, how do I make these really simple effects? Like in pretty common categories, but there's like a lot of thought put into the tonality of them, and like the user interface is just super simple. No, good. Well, look, I mean, I'd love to hear, as we sort of play out on this, some sense that, you know, if you've got a favorite combinations, or even just stuff you're making up on the fly, like you think, you know what, you know, that and that might sound good, or whatever, and we'll just get a minute or two of playing right at the end. And just want to say, you know, thank you so much for coming over again. Thanks for having me.
It's always lovely to see you both. And you know, good luck with these and all the future Earthquaker pedals that come out. It's a great business. Make great pedals.
I appreciate it.
So it's always lovely to see you both as well. So thanks for coming in. But yeah, let's get some combinations and see what happens.
See what happens with however it's set.